How do we use the quadratic formula to solve a quadratic equation? This is what we'll be looking at in this very lesson. If you have not subscribed to this very channel, can you do so for me? The quadratic formula is what students normally call it the almighty formula because it can be used to solve any quadratic equation. One interesting thing about the quadratic formula is that it can be generated or derived using the completing of squares. You know that the quadratic equation is of the form. So to derive the quadratic formula, then we are going to use the completing of squares to help us find or derive the quadratic formula. So to complete the squares from a quadratic equation, the first thing that we are going to do is to transpose the constant to the right hand side of the equal sign. This is going to give us what? Minus c. Now once we are done with this, then we make sure that the coefficient of s squared is 1. Looking at this, we have a attached to the s squared. So we have to make sure that it is 1 by dividing through by the coefficient of what? S squared, which is a. So it means we are going to divide both sides or divide through by what? The coefficient of s squared. So from here you can see that this will cancel this. We are left with s squared plus b x all over a is equal to minus c all over a. Now once we are done with the coefficient of s squared, we move on to the coefficient of x. Now to complete the squares, we are going to multiply the coefficient of x by half and then we square it. So you multiply the coefficient of x, which is b over a by half, and then we square it. So this is going to give us b all over what? 2a, and all of this is raised to the power 2. Now once you have this, we are going to add it to both sides of the equation. So we will be having s squared plus bx all over a plus this. We have equal to minus c all over a plus this. We have s squared here, we have squared here. Let's group the squares together. Now when you remove the bracket or you expand, you are going to get b squared all over what? 4a squared. We have squared here, we have squared here. We can rewrite this in this very form: x plus b all over 2a, and all of this raised to the power 2. And we are going to have minus c all over a plus b squared all over 4a squared. So when you simplify this, you are going to get b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared. And now we are looking for x, but we have a squared variable here. So we can do away with the square by taking the square root on either side of the equation or the equal sign. So we take the square root here, and then we take the square root here. So from here, we can see that this power will cancel what? The radical sign, and we'll be left with x plus b all over 2a is equal to. Now, the moment we take the square root, we are going to have plus or minus, or we are going to add plus or minus. And then we have now we are still looking for x, or our interest is to find the value for x. So we have to transpose this term to the right hand side of the equal sign. This is going to give us minus b all over what? 2a plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. Now when you take the square root of 4a squared, you are going to get what? 2a. So you have all over what? 2a. Now finally, we have our x is equal to minus b plus or minus root of b squared minus 4ac. Since we are having the same denominators, they are adding or subtracting, we can pick one of what? The denominators. So this is what we refer to as what? The quadratic formula, or what students normally call it the almighty formula. So we have the quadratic formula or the almighty formula. So we are going to use this formula to solve quadratic equations. So we want to use the quadratic formula to solve this quadratic equation. So the first thing to do is to identify your A, identify your B, and then you identify your C for the quadratic equation. So from here, RA is going to be what? 2. Our B is going to be minus 6. And then RC is going to be what? Minus 3. So once we have these parameters, we are going to substitute them into the quadratic formula. So with the quadratic formula, we have our x is equal to, so we are going to substitute this into this formula. Our b is minus 6. Already we have minus 6, we have minus 6 plus or minus, our b is still minus 6, we have minus 6 all squared minus 4. Our a is 2, our c is minus 3, and all of this is over 2, and then our a is still what? 2. Now once we have this, we just have to simplify. This is going to give us positive 6 plus or minus root of this is going to give us 36, and then we have this will give us 6, so we have plus 24 all over what? 4. So we have our x is equal to, we have 6 plus or minus, this is going to give us what? 60 all over what? 4. Since we are having plus or minus, we can split this into 2 to have our first x1 is equal to 6 plus root of 60 all over what? 4. And then we can have our x2 to be equal to 6 minus root of 60 all over 4. This is the plus, this is the minus. So we split it into 2 to have these two solutions. Now we can simplify this to get our x1 to be 6 plus, now this can be written as 4 times what? 15, and that's going to give us what? 60 all over what? 4. So we have our x1 is equal to 6 plus, we have 2 root of what? 15 all over 4. So similarly, we are going to have our x2 to be 6, and then we have minus 2 root of 15 all over 4. So the value for x which satisfies this quadratic equation is either x is equal to this or x is equal to that. Let's look at one more example and then we close for the day. So we want to solve this quadratic equation using the quadratic formula, this particular formula. So as I said, the first thing to do is to identify your A, you identify your B, and then you identify your C. Your A is 1, your B is minus 2, and then your C is what? Minus 3. So once you have this, we substitute this into the quadratic formula. So with the quadratic formula, we said that so we have our x is equal to our b is equal to minus 2. So we have minus and then minus 2 plus or minus square root of our b is still minus 2. So we have minus 2 all squared. Then we have this minus. Then we have 4. Our a is 1. So we have 1 times our c is minus 3. So we have minus 3. And all of this is over 2. Our a is what? 1. So let's perform some small algebra here. This is going to give us positive 2 plus or minus. This is going to give us positive 4. We have this minus. This will give us minus 12. So plus what? 12. And all of this is over 2 times 1 will give us what? 2. So we have our x is equal to 2 plus or minus 4 plus 12 will give us what? 16 all over what? 2. Now let's simplify further, especially the number under the radical sign. So we have our x is equal to 2 plus or minus root of 16 will give us what? 4 all over what? 2. Now once we have this, we can split this into 2 since we are having plus or minus. So we have our first x1, first solution is going to be 2 plus 4 all over what? 2. Or our x2 is going to be 2 minus 4 all over what? 2. So we have our x1 is equal to 2 plus 4 give us 6 divided by 2. That gives us our x1 to be what? 3. Then we have our x2 is equal to 2 minus 4 give us minus 2 all over these 2. And when you simplify further, you are going to get minus 1. So the value for x which satisfies this quadratic equation is either x is equal to this or x is equal to that. As easy as that. This brings us to the end of today's lesson. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.